Hi all, Bethany here with ZR2 Girls, and we are going to be installing the AEV fuel tank skid and the transmission transfer case skid. So I do have the underbody mounted camera, so love that this one has the cutout for that because the Bison edition of this truck does have that already on there. So this is compatible with the underbody mounted camera. I do have a 24 Colorado ZR2. It is not the Bison edition. So the three skid plates I can have are the fuel tank, the transmission, and then I have already installed the rear differential. The other two, you have to have the Bison bumper in order to be able to install those on there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to put on the screen right here the tools you're going to need to be able to get this install complete, and we'll go ahead and get right into that. Okay, so if you're going to be doing all of the skid plates, there is an order to which you have to do them. So you're going to start with that front IFS, then you're going to go to your radiator, then you've got to do your fuel tank, then you're going to do your transmission skid. The rear differential is independent, so that one you can do independently of all the rest, but just keep in mind that if you're doing all of them, there is an order that you have to start with to get these all installed properly. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to get these pencil braces loosely installed. So it comes with 3 of them, and they are 3 different ones, and it does matter where you put them. So you are gonna have the front inboard, which is gonna be the shorter of the 3. It's gonna be this one, and you are gonna install it like this. And then you're going to use the nut that's included in the hardware packet. And then moving backwards, you're going to have another one that has a 90-degree angle that's a little bit longer. That's going to go here in the rear inboard. And then you're going to have one that is slightly longer, but that does not have as much of an angle on it. And that is going to go to the rear outboard right here. So let's get those installed. And you're going to use your 15mm socket. All right, so now we're coming underneath here and we're gonna find the locations for all of the U-nuts that we have to install. So along the driver's side subframe, we've got 2 here. So we've got 1 here and 1 down here. And then along the crossbar here, we've got 3. The first one, we're skipping this middle one. Here's 2, and then we have an open one, 3. Moving towards the back of the vehicle, you're gonna have 1 that is right up here on the crossbar. Moving back where you have your circular bar, you do have a hole that is already drilled, but we have to drill it out further to 9/16, and we're gonna have to install the rivet nut location here. And then if we come back towards the rear, but on the driver's side again, you're gonna feel right up in here, and you have to feel on the side here. You're also gonna feel another hole where you have to put another U-nut up there. So we're gonna go ahead and get these started to get these in. All right, so I removed those 2 existing bolts that were there, and then if you move towards the back, there was 2 more here that I removed because I'm going to be installing the transfer case next anyway, so that had to be removed. So now we're going to install the U-nut. So again, you have on your crossbar here, you're going to have 3, but you have 2 existing. There's just 2 right here, and then we're going to have 1 right here. And then moving down, you're going to do 1, and then 2. Okay. Oops, wrong way. That would have sucked. All right, so now we've got those done. We're gonna come back along here, and you have another one that's gonna go right up here. Actually, let's see if I can get it better underneath there. It's gonna go right there. All right, so we're towards the rear here. This one's a little more tricky. So it's actually on the side of this bar. You can kind of feel it up here. You can feel where the little triangle cutout is. Woohoo! All right, so now we're back to the middle inboard, and this is where your one bracket's going to go up here. And then if we go outboard, we have bolt here, and then we will have a bolt here. And then moving back, that bracket that was on the rear outboard is right here. Let's see what I'm doing. Okay, so I had loosely put these two in to try to get this held up to make sure that I was going to be drilling the right spot down there. But because we are going to be installing the transmission skid, we're actually only going to leave the one closest to the driver's side in, and these two are going to stay out for right now because this is actually where that transmission skid is also going to mount to. All right, so right up here is where we're going to have to actually use the 9/16 to drill that hole bigger and do the rivet nut. So we are towards the rear, and orient you here. Here's the front of the vehicle, front of the skid plate, moving back. And we are going to work on getting that hole a little bit bigger and installing the rivet nut. Okay, so now let's do it. Okay, so we're moving on to the transmission skid while we let the paint dry in the back where the rivet nut's gonna go. So we have our fuel skid here, and now we're looking towards the front of the vehicle. So you already have your U-nuts in from your fuel skid here, so you don't have to do anything with those. Now I removed that smaller skid plate that was over the transfer case. You already have an M8 U-bolt here, and you have one here. Coming along towards the passenger side, you have one more spot right here that you need to install an M8. Now you do have both M8s and M10s for this, so make sure you're using the right ones. Again, this one's going to be an M8. And then the two M10s are going to be more towards the front of the vehicle. Okay, so now again, we're looking towards the front of the vehicle. You have two M10s. You follow this along, you're going to come to the front here. You're going to have a hole here, and then if you go to the other side, you are going to have one on the other side right here. Okay. All right, so now we are gonna go underneath and we are gonna get the transmission skid. Here we go. So remember that these back here are gonna be your M8s, and then the front ones are gonna be your M10s. Just make sure you're using the right ones. And so now these ones towards the rear are going to go through both your fuel skid and your transmission skid. And once those are in, you can just tighten them all down. Let's start back here. And there are torque specs for these. I'll put those on the screen. So I need my 13 millimeter for these other ones. Oh, I already did that one. That is way easier than the fuel one. Okay, so now we have let the paint dry. Oh, let me get it up there. There we go. So we've let the paint dry where we drilled that hole. So now we are just going to take your rivet nut and you are going to get it installed right up in there and then get the bolt installed. All right, now that we got the rivet nut in and the M8 bolt in, so now you just need to torque down all of the bolts for the transmission skid and the fuel skid, and your install is complete. All right, so that is the full install of the AEV skid plates, the fuel and the transfer case and the transmission skid. Thank you guys for following along. If you can please like and subscribe, it truly does help me keep this channel going. If you want to see the adventure, that's over on Instagram at ZR2 Girls. Thanks, y'all.